Hi, I'm Turk Strongman at Taranki Ramataraka. Thank you for selecting this Chapter 8 narration from the Astral World by Swami Panchadasi. Chapter 7 was Scenes of the Astral. This is Chapter 8, Life and Work on the Astral. This is the next to the last chapter. The last one, Chapter 9, will be Higher Planes and Beyond. Here we go. So, hey, life and work on the astral. What I have just said regarding the nature of the astral scenery must not be taken as indicating that the astral itself is merely imaginary or unreal in any sense. Nor is it the substance of which the scenery is composed any less real than the substance of which the material world is composed. On the material plane, substance manifests as matter, while on the astral plane, it manifests in a finer form of stuff or material. Again, on the material plane, the material or matter is shaped by the physical forces of nature, or perhaps by the mind of man using the original material in order to build artificial structures or forms. On the astral, on the other hand, the astral material is not thrown into shape by physical forces, but is shaped and formed only by the thought and imaginative power of the minds of those inhabiting that plane. But these shapes, forms, and structures of the astral material are not to be thought of as existing merely in the mind of the astral dwellers. They have an independent existence of their own, being composed of astral material, though shaped, formed, and built up directly by the mind power of the astral dwellers, instead of by the physical forces of nature. The astral scenery, etc., survives the passing away of the mind which built it up, and disintegrates only after the passage of considerable time, just as do the material things on the earth plane. As for the power of the imagination, man, do not be deceived for a moment, for this is one of the most efficient powers in nature, and operates strongly even on the material plane, though on the astral its power is more easily recognized by the senses. To the dwellers on the astral, their scenery, buildings, etc., are as solid as those of the material plane to the dwellers thereupon. Passing through the various subplanes and their divisions, on the astral you notice a great variety of scenery and a great difference in the character and occupations of the inhabitants. But you notice one general characteristic underlying all of the differences. Namely, the fact that all of these persons, astral dwellers, seem to be filled with an intense earnestness and manifest a degree of concentration which gives to them an appearance of being preoccupied. This, often, to such an extent that they seem to be oblivious to our presence and passage through their midst, unless we address them directly. Again, everyone seems to be busy, even when their tasks are those of sport or play. The key to the occupation and pursuits of the dwellers on the astral is found in the principle that the life of the soul on the comparatively higher divisions of the astral consists in a working out of the intellectual desires and ordinary tendencies, tastes, likes, and aspirations, which they were unable to manifest fully in earth life. I do not mean the low sensual desires, or purely animal tastes, but rather the ambitions and similar forms of desire, or strong inclinations. Many of these inclinations may be very creditable and praiseworthy, rather than otherwise. But they are all concerned with physical manifestations, rather than with spiritual unfoldment and evolution in the strict sense of these terms. The higher planes are those in which the spiritual forces bud and flower, and bear fruit. The astral, even in its highest planes, is the scene of the living out and working out of earthly intellectual and similar ambitions and aspirations. The higher the plane of the astral world, the less are the old Earth scenes in evidence, even in the shape of the dim background we saw as we progressed on our journey. As we mounted on the scale, these old Earth scenes grew very dim. And where we are standing now, on the fourth subplane, they are practically out of sight. This particular subplane is not particularly elevating, but nevertheless is interesting to the student. As we pass from scene to scene, we see the happy hunting grounds of the American Indians, thickly settled with these old aborigines who have been dwelling there for quite a period of time. They are busy and happy, hunting their astral buffaloes and other game, all artificially created by their imagination, from the astral substance, and having no real existence as living, feeling animals. A little further on, we witness similar forms of the spirit land of other primitive people, in some of which the disembodied warriors fight and conquer great hosts of artificial foes, and then have great feasts according to their old customs. Valhalla is here, as well as the other imaginary paradises of the old races of men, but their inhabitants are dwindling in number, being caught up in the current, bearing them on to reincarnation. But note this, that while there is nothing elevating in the pursuits followed on these scenes, there is nothing degrading or lowering from a strictly spiritual point of view, but there is in evidence always a living out and wearing out of the old desires of this kind to make room for higher ones. All tends toward spiritual evolution. Raising our vibrations rapidly and passing over many degrees of scenes of this kind, we find ourselves on a considerably higher plane. Here we see men engaged in what would be called useful work in earth life, but they are performing it not as labor, but rather as a joyous recreation. Observing closely, you will see that the work is all of an intensive and constructive nature. The men and women are perfecting that in which their interest was engaged while on earth life. Excuse me, again. They are improving on their work and are filled with the joy of creation. They remind one forcibly of Kipling's mention of the future state when no one shall work for money and no one shall work for fame, but each for the joy of the working. On some of these subdivisions, we see the artists busily at work, turning out wonderful masterpieces. Also, musicians creating great compositions, of which they had vainly dreamt while in earth life. The architect builds great structures. The inventor discovers great things. And all are filled with the joy of work and the ecstasy of creative imagination. But make not the mistake, student, of regarding this as merely play, or as possibly a form of reward for well-done world work. Well-done world work, though, of course, both of these elements play their part in the general working of the law. The main thing to remember is that in this work on the astral, there is an actual mental advance and progress. Moreover, in many cases, here in these very planes of the astral, there is being built the mold from which we'll actually pour great inventive and creative achievements on the material plane in future incarnations of these souls now doing the work on this plane. Astral is the great pattern shop of the world. Its patterns are reproduced in matter when the soul revisits the earth scenes. Many a work of art, musical composition, great piece of literature, or great invention has been but a reproduction of an astral pattern. This will help to explain the feeling common to all great performers of a creative, imaginative, or intellectual work. The strange feeling that their work is but a completion of something at which they had previously wrought. A rediscovery, as it were. Again, in this work play of the astral, the soul is always at work using up old ideas, aspirations, etc., and discarding them finally. In this way, real progress is made. For after all, even earth life is seen to be largely a matter of living out and outliving, of mounting higher on the steps of each mistake, and each failure. In the work of the astral, many old ideas are worked out and discarded. Many old longings exhausted and discarded. Many old ambitions manifested and then left behind on the trail. There is a certain burning up and burning out of old mental material, and a place made for new and better material in the new earth life. Often in this way on the astral there is accomplished as much in the direction of improvement and progress as would be possible only in quite a number of earth lives. Life on the astral is very earnest and intense. The vibrations are much higher than on the material plane. Bearing this principle in mind, these astral scenes which you are now witnessing take on a great and a new meaning. You recognize them as very important schoolrooms in the great school of life. Work is being done here that cannot be accomplished elsewhere. Everything has its meaning. There is no waste effort or useless activity in the universe, no matter what the careless observer may say to the contrary. The astral is no joke of the universe. It is one of its great real workshops and laboratories of the soul. It has its distinct place in the work of spiritual unfoldment and evolution. Chapter 9, as stated previously, will be the final chapter, Higher Planes and Beyond. See you then.